So, preparing for race 2. And let's clean up a few things from yesterday, Neil.
Here's the incident down at turn 1 that took out Greg Murphy, and there was a collective sigh from the grandstand. On the extreme left was Jason Richards, who squeezed Paul Dumbrell a little, and they just glanced then off Greg Murphy. Here's another angle from Stevie Johnson's car. See Rick Kelly's car stationary on the grid. That's what triggered some of the chaos and split the pack, and that was the reason why Greg makes that violent impact there on the right-hand side. Took the front off the car. That crew worked till 3 o'clock this morning. They got the car back from the TAFE college then, and 6 of Greg's crew have not had any sleep at all. And fortunately, they've been able to get him back out on the grid.
As you saw, it was chaotic, and we've got another stalled car on the grid. It's James Courtney having some trouble getting away, but finally he does. Terrific result for James Courtney yesterday to finish in the top 10 in 8th place after starting 15th, and his spirits are high by that. Let's take a look at the Mitsubishi Fuso starting grid, our 3D grid, and yes, it's all in reverse. The 2 Tasman Commodores starting up front, Jason Richards and Andrew Jones.
And the problem for Jason yesterday was they blew a seal in the power steering on that car. As we go back down through the order, news relating to various cars on this grid. Todd Kelly in car number 22, the reason for his dramas yesterday, he had a problem with air in the power steering. Ultimately, it flicked the belt off, and we saw the disastrous consequences. That required an engine change overnight. We've detailed a little of what happened to Greg Murphy, an all-nighter for those guys. Car handed back from the TAFE crew at 3 a.m. 6 of the crew with no sleep. Brand new engine in that car. Great drive from Cam McConville. He was almost a lap down after that incident at the start of the race, and he came back through the field. Rick Kelly, the problem for him was they had a line locker on the car at the start where he just uses that brake pressure to hold the car on the line. While he was doing that, it cooked the clutch. He was able to start the car on the starter motor and go racing. They have replaced the gearbox and the clutch in that car. You can imagine how difficult it was to do the compulsory pit stop for Rick. Garth Tander, problem with the jump start. We'll try and tell you a bit more about that a little later on. Marcus Marshall, incidentally, will start rear of grid for not observing the blue flags yesterday when traffic was lapping him. Incidentally, Mark Scaife, who's down there at the back, has been pinged $2,000 for a little colourful language at the end of the shootout yesterday.
So there you have it, the Mitsubishi Fuso starting lineup. Darryl.
Well, not an opportunity to do a warm-up at this particular event. Greg Murphy's team tried to get a sighting lap this morning. They said no, so Murph used that lap earlier before the start of this race to check the car. He was in pit lane. He said it feels good left to right. Car feels all okay, boys, and he will start from pit lane.
And the landscape looks like this. It's a longer race than yesterday. 140 kilometres. It's 50 laps around the Pukekohe circuit and compulsory pit stop for tyres. That window is between lap 5 and lap 35. That's the same for both today's race 2 and 3. We've had a report from the chopper pilot. Rain is about 5 minutes away.
And that'll be the wild card in this event if we do in fact have rain, and you've got a whole mix going on with the traffic. And we detailed earlier about how do you play this. Do you play it aggressively? Do you play it cautiously? You must try and finish the race. I'll be surprised if Jason Richards is not able to just bolt away from this position. We know he's got a good car. There was a lot of emphasis on the potential of his performance for this weekend. Been frustrating for him so far. Dramas with the power steering. Actually got a black flag at one point. He was having trouble negotiating the hairpin.
Ready to go for a start. Race 2 at Pukekohe. Let's go. First reverse grid race in 4 years. And it's the Auto Trader Commodores for Tasman Motorsport that blast away. Jason Richards starting from the front row and gets away nicely, but we're looking to the back of the pack. The guys who enjoyed success yesterday, will they again today?
Very good start by Jason Richards, who was able to make good ground. Andrew Jones had to have a second stab at the clutch to get the car launched away. Looking here at Warren Luff in the Fujitsu Ford. Paul Radisich up on the outside, Porter in there as well.
And Tander, look at Tander up the outside to the hairpin. They're almost 4 abreast.
This will be the nervous spot round the track, because if there's a concertina, which there is, big trouble in the middle of the pack. Huge contact there. One of the Gary Rogers cars has been turned around, a Team BOC car. Jamie Whincup has got damage. This is what we feared at the hairpin.
And Wilson Wilson got crunched as well, and is that Paul Radisich?
John Bowe, big damage on the front of his car.
Mark Porter, a lot of smoke coming from his car. So crunch time on the first lap. Porter will need to be a little careful here. He's got Paul Morris right behind. The fast guys are coming through.
Jason Bargwanna with damage to the front right corner of the WPS Ford. They've got a bit of a fold in the front right guard, and that could potentially damage that tyre. And you can see the splitter is also dislodged. It's actually shaving rubber off that tyre. Very dangerous. Jamie Whincup, there's the damage.
There was also severe damage, Neil, to one of the Jack Daniels cars. Greg?
It's extensive, boys. There's coolant slowly leaking out of the front of the 88 car. The man who led this championship coming into the Pukekohe round. Lots of damage to the bonnet, to the side door. And there was a raft of radio messages from team managers and engineers before the start of this race. Patience will be the key. That was the message already. Some action unfolding.
And Jason Bargwanna's run has come to a stop. He's buried in the sand trap down there because that front right tyre did blow. He couldn't pull the car up down there. Look at the damage on Stephen Richards, Jack Daniels Holden through turn 1. He's battling with Russell Ingall. The order at the moment, folks: Jason Richards leads, half a second over Andrew Jones, Steve Owen, Garth Tander to 4th, then Brad Jones, Will Davidson, Lee Holdsworth, Rick Kelly, Paul Morris, Mark Porter. Here we are on board with Russell. He is in 14th at the moment and making a move on Richo.
Big progress from the defending champion. Richards won't allow it though. Richards comes back on the inside.
So is the safety car being deployed. I figured that would be the case when we saw Jason in that awkward position up there at turn 5, and that's water on the front of our camera lens down there at the hairpin, the southernmost end of the circuit. So Russell readdressed his position as Stephen comes in to deal with the damage on the front of the car.
So there you have it. What a start to the reverse grid format.
No way I can drive the car without the power steering back, but he's got to fix the power steering.
So we've got a power steering issue for Steve, and he's telling Barry Ryan, I can't drive the car without power steer. That was the difficulty for a couple of competitors yesterday. This is Paul Radisish's Team Kiwi Racing Holden Commodore in the lane. Massive damage on John Bowe's car here. 200th start in yesterday's race. Big bonnet damage, radiator intake, front bumper bar support and front wing. And this is Stephen Richards' car.
Put it down. Put it down. Put it down. Let me have a look. Let me have a look. It's done the right way.
Stephen Richards' car, just watching the team here right now. Larry Perkins overlooking these guys. They've got a belt on standby, obviously the power steering, Neil, that you mentioned, but Larry said to these guys, the most important thing is have a look underneath. If the radiator is buggered in this car, stick it in the garage.
And I think that I picked up a little of the conversation where they were talking about a leak, and if that's the case, they're in trouble, and they're using the Go jacks, which are the little jacks they insert under the back of the car. There's Jason Bargwanna, no tyre, or at least a deflated tyre in the front right-hand corner, Greg.
Ludo Lacroix has opened the passenger side door for me to enable us to speak to Jamie Whincup. In the interim, they had the dent puller out on the front of the car. The airbox is broken. Jamie, just quickly, what happened from your standpoint, from your view?
Yeah, it looked like Mark Porter had a spin at the hairpin, and there was a few cars involved, and it was pretty well stopped. And I actually stopped my car to see what was going to happen, and someone just pushed me from behind and just pushed me straight into a big or a couple of cars. I think I hit a Valvoline car at the end, but I had my foot hard on the brake. I was just getting pushed from behind.
Damage looks bad. Is the goal here just to try and get out and salvage some points if you can?
Oh, absolutely. We'll get back out there for the sponsors and try to get 75% of the race done so we can get some points, but not the best way to finish race 2, but on my behalf, it's sort of unavoidable.
Hard luck, Jamie Whincup there.
And that's the issue. Unavoidable is the key word. There's going to be a lot of that through this year where you find yourself in the unwitting position of just being in the middle of something that you had no control over, and going up into a fast approach to a hairpin like turn 5. It's a 270k approach. You're braking for about 150 metres or so down to a 60 kilometre an hour, in some cases first gear hairpin. Only have to have one little issue. Someone just gets it a little wrong, and all of a sudden all those behind are in trouble. So Luff touches Porter. That's what triggered it all, and then a heap of people had nowhere to go. Bang, bang, bang. Look at that.
And there was Bowe into Whincup and Whincup into Canto. None of them had an option. No one had a choice in that.
Here it is again from the front. Watch the Fujitsu car just touching the back of Porter's yellow Commodore, just in the late part of the braking zone. Little touch right there out of screen, and then all this angry pack arriving at full race speed. They jump on the brake pedal, everybody backs up. It looks like peak hour on a Friday afternoon in most Australian cities.
There was those who went way low or way high that were able to avoid that. John Bowe is released. Team BOC boys did a good job to get him out as quickly as he did. But for Bargwanna, not the same case. And his teammate, Max Wilson, his car received a touch-up as well, but he's able to... Is he still out there? It's hard to tell. Keep an eye out for Wilson.
So just reiterating, the safety car lights are out. We will go racing when they get to the control line. Remember, a reminder of the rules here. They must not pass before they get beyond the control line. They must remain in formation and no more than 5 car lengths apart, or they can cop a penalty as well. Jason Richards is the leader from Andrew Jones, his teammate. Steve Owen is third. Garth Tander fourth. Brad Jones, Will Davison. That's the top 6 cars. There comes GT straight to position 3. So Tander up.
And his teammate's not too far away, nor is Will Davison. So here they come. And the best from yesterday, Mark Scaife is back in 15th. The guy who finished second to him, Russell Ingall, is up to 13th already.
On board here with Scaife. It's all the traffic concertina at the end that matters. So let's have a look out the front here and see what happens. Are they going to make a clean run of it this time?
Rick Kelly on the inside of Will Davison. Can't quite get there.
Cleanly through turn 5, so it seems.
Ingall's in. Russell Ingall came in. Pit window opens at 5, closes at lap 35. Here he is in the Caltex Ford. Decided to get out of that traffic.
Still sprinkles of rain outside our commentary box window here. Garth Tander's done the fastest lap of the race, a 57.2. He's position 3 at the moment. This is Rick Kelly with a brand new gearbox and clutch in this car after the dramas yesterday.
His pit crew said he had to engage neutral there for a while because the wheels were still turning when he came into the pits for the stop, and easily whipped by Will Davison. Plenty of grunt on board that Toll HSV car.
So that takes him to 6th as Ingall takes his compulsory stop for tyres. They do rears only on the Caltex entry.
And Ingall will come out with nice, clear track conditions. Pretty smart move.
Jason Richards the leader. Andrew Jones still runs with him. Actually, Andrew is hanging on. Doing a good job in second spot there. Garth Tander to position 2 now. 56.8, fastest lap of the race. So Jason Richards, Garth Tander, Andrew Jones.
Frustrated was an understatement describing Garth Tander yesterday after that jump start drive-through penalty.
Todd Kelly shadowed Craig Lowndes into pit lane, and they both left the lane in exactly the same way. The 888 Falcon, a change of rear tyres, a change of rears for the 22 HRT Commodore. Quickly, ambient temperature 24 degrees, on track it is 28. And as Lee detailed in relation to the weather, the locals here say expect sporadic showers all afternoon.
Here come the hungry pack, Cameron McConville and Winterbottom fighting over territory. Bargwanna, his race is done. And he's frustrated, look at him, understandably.
We had a shot there of Cam McConville with the car maxed out under brakes into the turn 5 hairpin. He did get away with the move, but the thing was right on its tippy toes on the way in as we join Mark Scaife in the pit lane. Compulsory stop for Mark. He's in 13th, or he was 13th as he came to the lane.
Jason Richards, Garth Tander, Andrew Jones, Steve Owen, Brad Jones. That's the top 5. Then Rick Kelly, Davison, Morris, McConville and Holdsworth.
Looks as though several, well, more than several teams are choosing to play the longer game here. We've well past the opening window for the compulsory stoppers. We look at Scaife. Rears only on that car.
Big inside move here, and nicely done. Whoa.
That looked a little untidy on the exit there. Here's Ingall. Took the opportunity to pit in clear air, but comes out in clear air. Here comes Scaife. This is critical. Scaife will lead him to turn 1, but he's on cold tyres, at least at the rear, but they come up to temperature quickly.
So Ingle was ahead of Scaife when he pitted. That's some nifty work by the HRT boys in the pits. And a good in-lap from Mark Scaife to get that margin on Russell Ingle.
Halfway down the back straight for Russell Ingle, looking to the south. You can see some of those ominous dark clouds. There's the margin between Scaife and Ingle. Driving infringement for 25 Warren Luff. Drive-through penalty has been assessed. Oh, lock brake for Lowndes, front right.
And there has been severe damage to the Armco, and as a result of that, the race has been red flagged. Take a look at this impact.
Yeah, we just see the aftermath where John hits the wall very heavily on the outside. I heard the car go by our commentary point, and I saw all the spectators jump to their feet. It sounded strange as it went by, whether or not the track conditions were greasy at that moment and he couldn't pull the car up, whether it had a jammed throttle or some other issue as a result of the incident that he was involved in at turn 5 on the opening lap. We obviously don't know. We'll try and get answers as soon as possible. But John into the wall heavily. He's out of the car. He's okay. Big damage to the fence, and I suspect that's the reason for the red flag. Daryl, can you update us?
Neil, I have a few answers for you, and John Bowe's problem actually started before that accident when he was in pit lane earlier in the race when he touched the bonnet, was down on the top of that car. It was idling fast, so he switched it off in the pit stop. Kim Jones says when he's gone back out, the throttle has jammed, like you mentioned, and that's why the accident has happened. Yeah,
when it went past our commentary point, it sounded weird, and I could tell that, well, what I thought was John had actually dipped the clutch, and it was on the rev limiter as it went by, and you can't go in there even a car length too deep, and you just won't get the car stopped and turned, and that's the reason for the impact. So, Greg?
As you can appreciate at times like this, there's all sorts of rumours flying around, but there's some scenario in relation to the running of the safety car and the way at which it was conducted. Some suggestion that it was not run properly and a mistake there by the officials. Another scenario for you also is that John Bowe has also been taken to the medical centre just for a precautionary check we're hearing at this stage. We'll come back when we've got more for you.
And Greg, we should just reiterate the point here that we've only banked 14 laps on the computer, a 50-lap race. We've not reached 75% race distance, therefore this is a non-race. There can be no result in terms of the way the regulations are written. So if you've just joined us, this is race 2 of 3 New Zealand. Reverse grid race. As some of the drivers predicted, there was potential for difficulties. We had them up at turn 5. There was an incident between Warren Luff and Mark Porter, and then a series of cars all got stuck into each other, and then subsequent to that we had some rainfall. John Bowe with a throttle stuck going off at turn 1.
13 laps down, that leaves us with 37 to complete this event. But look at that. Rain is coming down. Windscreen wipers on. Raincoats and umbrellas throughout the stands.
And this will almost certainly trigger, well, I don't want to use the word chaos, we overuse it, but difficulties, to say the least, because on a slick tyre with a wet track, you have little or no control over the car. It's not sopping wet at the moment, but it's not far from it in some places, Greg.
Intermittent is the word, Neil. Just say 30 seconds to a minute and a half ago it was heavier. It now feels lighter. I'm right at the exit of pit lane. Just quickly, the break while the repair work has been completed at the circuit has been good news to a degree for some drivers. Mark Porter is back out there. Jason Bargwanna is back out there. So too is Stephen Richards. Just joining us at the exit of pit lane, Jamie Whincup. Great work by the 888 Race Organisation, and Paul Radicic as well. So they will at least hopefully be able to bag some points here, Daryl.
Rusty, the important thing that Roland Dane and that team just mentioned then, they said this race really means nothing to us right now. If a few people fall off from where we start from, we may bag about 6 points, but race 3 is now a concentration.
Yes, Lowndes is down in 20th position, and you just saw Jamie Whincup leave the pit box, and this is the WPS team working frantically to try and get its second car out there. Max Wilson, who was the first to depart the track after that chaotic opening lap of this reverse grid race.
We're getting a good look at the circuit now and see what sort of moisture levels there are around the track. There's the repaired car of Stephen Richards. There was a shot before of Dean Canto's car minus the rear bumper, a massive amount of race tape on the back of that car. You can see the 120-litre fuel tank casing exposed at the back of the car. The bladder itself's inside that aluminium casing, so no problem in terms of safety, but the car looks odd without the rear bumper assembly on it.
So they will line up.
Actually, doesn't look too bad there, Lee, in the braking area up towards turn 5. No evidence of rain on the front of Mark Scaife's car. So we might be okay, fingers crossed. Not that it's any problem to run in the wet, of course, if you're on a wet tyre. But if it starts to get terribly wet on a slick tyre, then it can be a real headache. So it appears as though it's wetter through here, through turn 6 and 7, and then onto the front straight.
The one thing that we have observed today is that the showers don't last very long. And as they come to the line, they will grid up as they were when the red flag came out. That means Garth Tander, Jason Richards will start from the front row. And the majority of this field have completed their compulsory stop. Brad Jones and Paul Morris well positioned. Steve Owen, Cam McConville. And Craig Lowndes has some work to do. He is right toward the back of the pack.
So effectively the race was frozen at the point where the red flag came out. The computer timing was then backdated to the previous lap to sort out the order of the field. And now we basically resume this race with Garth Tander, the stationary leader at the moment. There are various restart scenarios in the V8 Supercar operations manual. On board here with Stephen Richards, and he'll start right at the very back, perhaps even with the slight curvature there at the back of the field coming onto the final corner.
Now updating you here with some news about the duration of this event because of the delay in fixing that fence. The race has been shortened. I did mention to you initially it was a 50-lap race. It's back down to 33. So we've got a quick 20 to go. And there's the damaged area.
They've taken the fence section out, the Armco, the guardrail section out with the wooden piers behind it, and they've replaced it with concrete barriers like we see on a street circuit, and then pinned them with wooden dowels behind it just to hold it all in place. And speaking of holding things in place, look at the back of the Gary Rogers car there.
Ready to go, second time round. Big winner today has been Garth Tander. Can he keep it there? Race 2 is on again. And a big dive from one side of the track to the other. Who was that? Someone got a flyer there. It looked like Winterbottom. As they come through, Tander, then Jason Richards, then Brad Jones, Paul Morris and Steve Owen. That's the top 5. Ingle, Lowndes, Scaife, they're all bunched up together.
So everybody holds their breath on this opening lap on cold tyres. Very tight through turns 2, 3, 4. Tight here in the braking area up to turn 5, and they'll go up there 2 and 3 abreast.
Look at Winterbottom, he's impatient. He's almost on the grass. Contact with Steve Owen. And they maintain their position on track, but Winterbottom, after colliding with Steve, is able to continue. No damage done. Forceful move.
Mark got away with it, but gee, would not have wanted to go any further to the right, because if he made it onto the grass there, there'd be no grip.
Now they're into the groove.
0.7 of a second margin for Garth Tander. Here's the replay, Zinger replay. Watch Winterbottom. Look how close he is to the grass on the right. Another couple of millimetres, and he was in trouble there, but Steve opened up the steering. Steve Owen in the 55 car gave him a little bit of space, and they all lived happily ever after.
McConville was there ready to pounce, but couldn't quite do it. On board with Lowndes, you look at the cat Ford of Jason Bright. You're talking about 15th and 16th position. Look at them dive out of the queue. McConville wants Owen. Up into the hairpin. Is he close enough? Yes.
Russell Ingall, position 14 last lap. Mark Scaife just in front of him in 13. They were the front runners from race 1. Still traces of water on the lens of the camera at the final turn. Garth Tander now. Still 0.7 of a second over Jason Richards. There's the margins. Brad Jones, 3rd place, Team BOC. Then Paul Morris. Mark Winterbottom is next. Cam McConville. Steve Owen, Paul Dumbrell, Will Davison, Andrew Jones. That's the 10. Just outside it's Steve Johnson, James Courtney, Mark Scaife, Russell Ingall. Here's Mark Scaife, midway down the back straight.
Well, if you look at both races so far, the best performer is Mark Winterbottom. He finished 4th yesterday, and he currently runs 5th. So he is the best out of that front pack from yesterday, looking good. They jostle for positions. Johnson wants it. Courtney wants it as they come up on Andrew Jones.
James was trying to find a way underneath Stevie Johnson, and in turn Mark Scaife was looking at the back of James Courtney's car. Mark Porter in the pit lane, and has he got a problem? There's some damage that they're attending to there.
The Team BOC Ford of Brad Jones runs 3rd, so we look at a zinger replay here up at the hairpin, and it's between Porter and Luff, and they were the two that came together earlier. You might call that a little payback, perhaps.
0.6 of a second the margin between Tander and Jason Richards as this battle continues between Brad Jones and Paul Morris.
We were able to eavesdrop on them earlier during the break, and they both agreed, look, let's not take each other out. Let's get through this cleanly. Morris now lines Brad Jones up for a clean, crisp inside move. Easily done.
Brad knew that he was a little under pressure there. He left space for him. It's all happening at the hairpin. Courtney, Ingle, Jason Bright's in there. Where's Scaife? Has he been shuffled down the order a little bit in that gang? We'll have a good look.
Keep your eyes on that predominantly blue Ford. Winterbottom. He's sizing up Brad Jones. McConville wants a piece of the action as well. Jones keeps his place. He holds on to 4th. It's getting frantic at the front.
Scaife's still in front of Courtney, so that must have been the other HRT car that we had a glimpse of there.
It's Tander, Jason Richards, Morris, Brad Jones, Winterbottom, McConville, Owen on screen right now, Dumbrell, Davison, Andrew Jones, Steve Johnson is in 11th.
Bradley just swept the screen on his car, so he must have had some water or debris on it there. Now Winterbottom has a look up the inside. Don't know that he's close enough just yet there. Late in the break he is. Oh, big trouble there for Dumbrell with a locked left front, and underneath him comes, oh, trouble at the hairpin. Jones has gone round. The front of the car's been knocked off it.
And we saw Winterbottom. It looked like he had passage through. Cam McConville looked like he was making a late dive. I wonder if those guys have come together.
Bradley was actually detached from the front bumper, but as he went forward, he's picked it up and it's caught under the left front of the car. 56.7 for Garth Tander that lap, so he's going to have difficulty getting back, steering that car. So did he do that on his own, or did someone give him a hand?
The Gold Coast-based Paul Morris in the Team Cirame Commodore as Bright is in. Reports of a puncture to the Cat Ford. And Winterbottom has made quick work of Paul Morris. So the Ford Performance Racing man continues to impress here this weekend in Pukekohe. He now holds a 3rd place. Career best qualifying, career best result, and he has eclipsed that yet again.
Brad's back. Very kindly brought back the front end for the guys.
The radiator's leaking. Shut it down.
So it's losing fluid. Game over for Brad Jones. We saw drama for him up at the hairpin with the car turned around. Don't really know quite exactly how that happened at this point. We'll try and get that answer for you. Is this it? Yes, it is. So I think Cam McConville must have got into the back of Bradley, and then that in turn triggered Steve Owen and Paul Dumbrell and a bunch of other cars to go around the outside. Here's another angle. Here it is again, and around he goes. And then Steve Johnson takes the front end off the BOC car. Courtney and Ingle getting together up at turn 5.
Steve Johnson executes the move on Andrew Jones and makes swift work of that. It's been a very impressive start to the season for the Dick Johnson Racing man. In the First Rock Home Loans Falcon, Johnson is 6th in the championship coming into this race. Said the car feels good, I feel good. We've got a nice spirit in the team at the moment. Real positive vibe.
This is a fantastic battle, but a good point to see with Winterbottom. We were watching him on screen. He's getting onto that back straight either very, very well compared to those cars that are in front of him, or his straight line speeds being great with his opportunity of breaking into the hairpin.
On board with Ingle.
Fastest lap of the race
Ford Performance Racing, just to add on what Darryl was saying before, Winterbottom's teammate Jason Bright pitted a short time ago. They thought for a punctured right front tyre. I'm having a look at it now. Tim Edwards at FPR tells me there's no deflation as such, but there is some scuffing on the outside of the rim and some damage to the wheel nut. Perhaps the vibration is what made Jason think it was a puncture.
Fastest man on the racetrack at the moment is still Garth Tander. He's done the quickest lap, 56.6. There's just a little bit of trouble brewing here at the moment as Russell Ingall applies pressure to Andrew Jones as they come up through the final corner. Car number 26, black flag, Mark Porter for his role in that incident at turn number 5. Order at the moment is Tander, Richards, Winterbottom, Morris, McConville, Davison, Scaife to 7th, Stephen Johnson, Andrew Jones, Russell Ingall here is 10th. Behind him his teammate is James Courtney. 1.1 seconds is the margin between Tander and Jason Richards as Ingall has a look up the inside here as they get to the braking area. Steve Owen in the pit lane.
And there's McConville on the inside of Paul Morris, so another one clicked off. McConville now moves into the top 4. And in the background is Will Davison. Can he possibly achieve a top 5? And the question was asked in this reverse race format, can you come from the back to the front? Well, yesterday's winner, Mark Scaife, currently holds 7th place.
1.3 seconds is the margin between Tander and Richards, and still just little traces of rain out there at the moment, which adds further pressure for all the drivers. Wow, what a race. Split into 2 pieces. Steve Owen rejoins. So Tander in the box seat, and here he is in the braking area. That's what the margin looks like. There's the gap back to Mark Winterbottom. This will give you an idea of where they are in the field. There's Cam McConville, great progress. In a scrap at the moment with Morris. Another margin then back to Will Davison. Next man in the queue, Mark Scaife. Stephen Johnson, Russell Ingall, Rick Kelly, James Courtney, Craig Lowndes, Greg Murphy, Todd Kelly. That takes us down to 14th in the field.
Wouldn't that be an amazing result? As Lee Holdsworth comes on the inside of Marcus Marshall, the two lightly touch. Wouldn't that be a result for Super Cheap Auto Racing if Greg Murphy could bounce his way into the top 10 after crunching the Armco barrier yesterday? We showed you that earlier. It was a massive incident. The team, 6 of them, did not sleep last night. Worked entirely through the night. The IAG TAFE team did a wonderful job to get that car ready, along with the crew of the Super Cheap Auto Race team. And Murphy sits 13th.
Fastest lap of the race for this guy so far has been a 57.1, but on that last lap he did a 57.2. So Mark's orbiting at the moment in the low 57s and making good progress. Remember, winner of race 1 up to 7th place and starting to close in now on Will Davison. Russell Ingall, meantime, 2nd in race 1. Here he is in 9th position at the moment, also closing in on a DJR car, in this case Stephen Johnson.
And if you missed our explanation earlier in the show, this race, race 2, the reverse grid format, only half the points on offer here. He's in 9th, chasing Stephen Johnson. And look at those clouds above. The weather has threatened all day. Sprinkles, small showers, no major downpours though. We've been very fortunate thus far.
Max Wilson has been plucked out of the race because he didn't come under starter's orders in the WPS car. Well, a bloke that had a very frightening ride going to turn 1. I heard the car go by our commentary point. It sounded like it was on the rev limiter with the clutch dip. John Bowe, that would not have been a pleasant experience.
As usual, mate, you're a very observant character. Yeah, the throttle jam, which it hadn't shown any sign of that, but the impact on that first lap that it took broke a little piece of carbon fibre off the airbox, and it wiggled its way down and jammed the throttle linkage. So, you know, one of those funny motorsport tales, you know.
Yeah, all of a sudden there was just, you know, something happens out of rhythm, John, and a car goes blowing by, and it was right near where we were here at that point, and it must have been a very, very solid impact with the wall. You're okay? You haven't got too many bruises or bumps?
Mate, I'm a bit like James Bond. I'm shaken, not stirred. It was a big impact. I've had very, very few crashes in my career. The big one I had was at Phillip Island in '96. And this was a different impact, but it was the same sort of shaking, that's for sure. I very rarely close my eyes in a racing car, but I closed my eyes just before it hit the fence and took my hands off the steering wheel.
And probably one of those incidents, John, where the hands device played a pretty positive role, no doubt.
Well, I think so. I mean, when you get winded, as you know, and I was grasping for breath for a couple of seconds afterwards, but I don't actually feel that bad. I'm a bit peeved by why it happened and how it happened, and you know, those sort of things shouldn't happen, obviously, but it's just life, isn't it? And we'll get on with it. The biggest disappointment to me is I'm not out there racing, so I guess I haven't lost the urge yet, have I?
John, on a positive note this weekend, congratulations from all of us on reaching your 200th championship round start and joining Peter Brock, Dick Johnson and Glenn Seaton as the only other driver to achieve that. So that's a nice one, mate.
Well, it is a nice one, mate, but it was all downhill from there, wasn't it? Yeah. So we just look forward to the next race. You know, we're all a group of optimists in this business, and hopefully the car actually felt quite good, although for the few laps I did, the airbox was all crushed in, so but it actually felt all right, so I think we're getting somewhere.
John, thanks very much for your time. We wish you well. See you at the next event.
Okay, thanks, guys.
There he is, Team BOC's John Bowe. And we get back to the race because you saw a pretty major move from James Courtney, and there's a pretty major move from Mark Scaife. Gets by Will Davison. Will gives him a little tap on his way through, but Scaife's been able to disappear.
And this is all good news for Mark Scaife at the moment, because remember I made the remark earlier about the combination of points from races 1 and 2. Here's Will give him a little touch up in the middle of the hairpin. No big deal though, it was cleanly nose to tail. And Mark at the moment in the current position has 182 points. He's in 6th on the road. That would give him pole position for race 3. And that's the way to start the final race of the weekend. He's got a margin, let me see. Next man, in fact, in the queue would be Mark Winterbottom with 176 points.
Great result so far for Jason Richards of Tasman Motorsport. They've had a lot of heartbreak so far in 2006. To pick up a second place in this second race will really lift their spirits. He's 2.5 seconds behind Tander as we're within the closing laps of this two-part race, if you wish to call it that, this interrupted second race at Pukekohe. Great story too for Cameron McConville. Yesterday got tangled up in that incident with Greg Murphy, went right to dead last in the race, worked his way forward to 13th, and McConville now sits 4th. That's a very solid performance. But nobody can catch this guy, the tall HSV Commodore of Garth Tander. There's Jason Richards. That's what the 2.5 seconds looks like. Tander did try and pull a positive yesterday, Neil, out of his frustrating day when he said, well, I got fined $5,000 for my indiscretion with Todd Kelly at Melbourne. He said, but I won the Armour All Pole Award, and that was $5 grand, so I got it back.
A lot of effort to get back to square, though, in both directions. This man has had a terrific weekend so far. Mark Winterbottom, he's 3rd in the race. He's got 176 points, which will give him a front row start for race 3.
Superb weekend for Mark Winterbottom. His teammate suffered a puncture earlier. That's why we saw the Cat Ford come back into pit lane earlier. As we review the top 10, there's McConville, Tander Richards, Winterbottom, then that man, then Paul Morris for Team Suramay. Great run to be in the top 5, and he has just a little over a second back to Mark Scaife. Then it's the 2 Dick Johnson Racing Fords of Will Davison, Steve Johnson, and that will help to strengthen his as Paul Radicic is back in the lane. And then it's Ingle and James Courtney rounding out the top 10, and Rick Kelly has put in a very solid drive as Whincup returns to pit lane as well. It's been a troublesome weekend for the former points leader.
Oh, Todd Kelly and Greg Murphy getting together under brakes in turn 5.
Murphy defending his 13th position. There's Lowndes, he's in 12th. And there's Rick Kelly just ahead, that's 11th. The scrap is on. Rick Kelly is the championship leader at this point. He has never been that in his V8 supercar career. Time running out, just a couple to go.
This battle is for 11th and 12th. And that Murphy-Todd Kelly scrap is happening immediately behind these fellas.
Max, it was such a fantastic start to the weekend for yourself and WPS, but disappointment in race 2.
Yeah, race 2 wasn't good for me. And the first lap, and just after the start, going to turn 1, Craig Lowndes just drove into my car and ended up breaking my steering rack, and we had to park it, and it was really a shame because we finished 6th yesterday on the first race, and I know our target is to try to be thereabouts. Unfortunately, that did not happen, but I did a couple of laps now just to see if the car was alright, and the car seems to be good. So hopefully for the second race today, try to keep out of the drop and try to have a good finish to try, not to drop too back on the championship.
Well, hopefully race 3 continues into a good weekend.
Thank you very much. Hope the car will be good and finish well.
Ludo Lacroix and Jamie Whincup. Whincup out of the car and out of business in this second race. Not the fairy tale that he enjoyed in Adelaide. Great shame, but great promise, and I'm sure he'll be back. Meantime, we go back to Mark Skaife at turn 5. Courtney's off the road as they exit turn 5, so trouble there for the Geraldwen man. In car number 4, he's come back out in front of Jason Bright. He was in 10th, but he'll be down in about 20 or 21st.
James Courtney said yesterday at the start of the opening race when he went tearing down towards turn 1 and he saw Greg Murphy spinning in front of him, he thought, oh no, here we go again. Zinger replay. Take a look at this.
Oh dear. He went straight down the inside of his teammate and Stephen Johnson. He couldn't pull it up. He must have missed the brake pedal or something strange, because he locked the front right momentarily and then obviously got out of it to make sure that he didn't have a huge accident, but would have known that he was going to run off the road.
Morris and Skaife. Skaife looked like he had him, then Morris responded well. They were sideways out of the hairpin. It's Team Suramay versus the Holden Racing team. Drag race down the front stretch. Skaife's lining up for a turn 1 move.
Ooh, not a lot of space down there, and you can see how it disappeared quickly. Mark was looking up the inside, but Paul must commit to the race line there because there's no grip wide of it.
And Morris will be enjoying this. Being up the front, he's just outside the top 10 in the championship, incidentally. And he's got the man who won race 1 yesterday. Now Skaife lines him up. This is more clear cut. Gotcha.
And this is where managing your driver in this race is going to be an important thing, because I'm sure that Mark will have been made aware of where he sits in the points, which will dictate his starting position for race 3. So, if you've got car speed, which he's showing, Greg Murphy's gone around at turn 5 again. Problems up there. And I say again, not for Greg, but more problems at this same spot. It always is a tricky spot to negotiate on this racetrack. But if you've got car speed going back to that point, you just have to be a little careful when and how you use it in this format, because you don't want to give away your position later on. Oh, that's Courtney and Murphy getting together down there. Courtney must be having some sort of a problem under brakes down there.
And it happened not only that time and the time before, but earlier in the race as well.
Now he is 12th at the moment. That's Todd Kelly tucked in behind 13th. And Jason Bright's in behind them, but Jason's actually further back because he's 1 lap down. So he may be behind them on the road, but he's not in terms of the lap scoring.
Up ahead, Lowndes and Rick Kelly continue their fight for the top 10, for the last spot in the top 10.
Well, I don't quite know what transpired there. Stephen Richards was in for the Jack Daniels racing team to serve his compulsory pit stop because he retired from the first stanza of this 2-part race. He hadn't completed a CPS and was required to do so, but as they dropped the car off the jacks, the car slewed violently sideways and the boys had to prop it up again and then re-tension the right rear tyre, so perhaps it may not have been fastened properly. A lot of questions being asked down here.
Sometimes when the wheels don't go onto the drive pegs, you get a false indication from the wheel nut, Greg, that you think the wheel's up and done tight, and often when you load it, it just moves on the hub, and all of a sudden you need to grab it again. That's can be a trap.
what it looks from the outside and the inside. Rick Kelly has demonstrated on multiple occasions this year a level of maturity in that when the chips have been down, he has not given up. He did it at Adelaide after the jump start, and he did it yesterday. No clutch. Drove the entire race with no clutch. Came in for his compulsory pit stop. The boys put it up on the jacks. Naturally, the wheels were still moving. He had to crunch it into neutral and then get going again. They were very impressed with his performance.
Getting into neutral's the relatively easy part. Getting it back into gear's the hard part, and that would have done the gearbox no favours. Incidentally, James Courtney, black flag for the troubles he's been having at turn 5, where he got together up there a couple of laps ago. There he is serving the drive-through penalty. That will drop him down the order.
Was in contention for a top 10 finish. Not anymore. Tander, Jason Richards, Mark Winterbottom, Cam McConville, Mark Scaife. That's the top 5. Then it's Paul Morris, Will Davison, Russell Ingall, Steve Johnson, Rick Kelly. That's how the top 10 sit. And after that contact between Courtney and Murphy, Greg Murphy is back down in 17th place.
Lee, just on that, Greg's engineer, Steve Henderson, has been talking to him during the race about how much they're earning in the way of points at the moment, where they stand in relation to a grid spot for race 3. Greg's concerned there are some odd handling characteristics. He's not happy with the performance of this car at the moment. He said, can we pit and make a change? Is it worthwhile trying to do that now? But the team is saying, stay out there, earn as many points as you can.
You bet. That's what it's all about. Someone who'll be delighted with his points all so far this weekend is Mark Winterbottom. After the opening 2 races, if positions stay as is, this man is second in the points and will start alongside Mark Scaife on the front row for the 3rd and final race later today. He's come from the Larkham Motorsport organisation to Ford Performance Racing. That was one of the big stories.
7 laps to go. 3-second gap to Richards.
And Lee, the engineer for his teammate's car, Phil Keed, who works on Jason Bright's Cat Ford, said to me yesterday that they are super impressed with this young guy. Very, very strong in go-karting, Mark Winterbottom. But the key thing they're enjoying about him since he's come on board with this team is he likes very similar characteristics to Bridie in the car. And Jason has good faith, good trust in the sort of diagnosis and feedback. When Mark comes in and says, look, it's doing this, it's doing that, Jason can actually take some quite valuable gains from it.
They did a test day recently, Greg, where they shared the test day with Brytech, and they tested current IRL and A1 driver Thomas Enger, the Czech driver. And therefore, for the FPR boys, Bright and Winterbottom shared the same car. And Tim Edwards from the team was telling me that it was quite interesting to watch them push each other. If one was a 10th faster than the other one to try and get a 10th ahead, and they just slammed each other all day long on the track, looking to see who was fastest, as we ride with Steve Richards.
Turn 2 for Stephen as Bargwanna's car goes back into the garage. Turn 3, then 4. They all come in rapid-fire succession. Coming onto the back straight at about 95 Ks and then building up here. Remember last year they put a taller final drive ratio in the cars, 325 to 1. It's about a 270k top speed here in 6th. Braking between the 200 and 100 boards. Huge brake temperature here, slowing right down to 60 Ks. Building speed again, 210 Ks across the face of turn 6. Big bump there, and then another one right here as you bring the car through to the right, hovering about 190 Ks, and then building back up on the pit straight, pointing right down here towards our commentary area, 250 kilometres an hour. The laps roll off quickly around here, sub 1 minute lap.
James Courtney, who has dropped to 19th position in the order. As we pick up our 4th place man, Cameron McConville. He is using the team's spare car. Been involved in some incidents this year, most notably that huge smash in the second race. And who have we lost? Todd Kelly.
He's on the outside of the hairpin. Todd was down in 12th. Andrew Jones just rounding him up here on the outside. Drive-through penalty for Craig Lowndes, driving infringement on Rick Kelly. Here we go, Ingle and Morris. These guys arguing over 6th and 7th.
Then it's the teammates in 8th and 9th, Davison and Johnson. Ingle has made good progress. Let's see what he can do about Morris in the Team Suramay Commodore.
Just getting benefit from the draft offered up by Paul's car. They'll have a look down the inside here. Should be able to get it done. Is he far enough up though? Yes. Having a bit of trouble just pulling it up, Russell, at the last minute, but gets it done cleanly.
Paul Morris is good out of that hairpin. It's exactly what he did with Scaife earlier, but Russell's got the track position.
That brings him up to 7th. So he will get a couple of extra points for moving up that extra position. And that'll give him 178 points, which would put him on the front row for race 3. And that move there brought him up and displaced Winterbottom back to position 3. A discussion here between Roland Dane, it seems, and the V8 Supercars Australia representatives. Greg Rust's down there just doing a bit of eavesdropping at the moment as well to find out what the story is. Kelvin O'Reilly from the Touring Car Entrance Group of Australia there is on the right. Roland Dane on the left. Is that Kurt there in the middle?
Kurt Siksuski.
Yeah.
And you can see how animated it is. It means Lowndes will have to forfeit his 10th place. That will allow Rick Kelly to come back up into the 10.
And Kurt saying, look, it's a decision from race control. It's too late now, Roland. Your boy's in the pit lane, so it'll have to be something debated later on. Rusty, as always, is on the job. What can you add, mate?
Roland, what's going on? You seem pretty hot under the collar about this.
Yeah, they've given Craig a drive-through penalty, apparently for an altercation with Rick Kelly. Rick Kelly lost one place, he didn't wreck his race, and he'd been holding Craig up for lap after lap after lap. You know, we're meant to be trying to come through the pack. It's that we've had a farce today, and this is another part of it.
Now tell me quickly, you had a word to them. Were they, did they listen to what you had to say?
No. It's a fait accompli.
There you have it.
And Lowndes performs his drive-through penalty and does as we said, loses that 10th spot.
So much happens in these races that it's easy to erase the memory banks. I can't recall that incident between those two.
Nothing that we saw, no. And Lowndes rejoins behind race leader Garth Tander. As they're on their way home, it's this man's first win since Symmons Plains late last year, and he will be delighted with that. He won the pole, was alleged to have jumped the start, had to perform a drive-through penalty, was furious, did a good job of keeping calm in the car and drove through the field, and will win the first reverse grid race. It's race 2 here at Pukekohe, and it goes to the Toll HSV man, Garth Tander.
Good win.
And that's his race engineer, Matty Nilsson, on the line, telling his man, good job, well done, as we go inside the Toll HSV team. There's the man who was just on the radio. Great bond, great relationship between those two guys. England Scaife did particularly well to be the top 2 yesterday and to come through to 5th and 6th respectively.
And that cemented their starting positions 1 and 2 for race 3. They've got a long way through that field then, Lee. That's impressive. Both of those drivers could be very well pleased with that. And a bit of sugar for Ford Performance Racing Commercial Director there, Rod Barrett, congratulating his men. Tim Edwards would have been in the background representing the technical half of that partnership, and they've had a tough time in the last couple of races. Tom Walkinshaw from the Tom Walkinshaw Performance Group there with his men. Dave Weimer from the engine shop at Holden Racing Team, and these fellas happy with a 5th for Mark, makes him the pole man for race 3.
And his number one enemy in V8 Supercars will be right alongside as we check the VB scoreboard. The race results for the second one here in Pukekohe. Much relief for Jason Richards to come in behind Garth Tander. That's a real sweet one for Tasman Motorsport in the Auto Trader Commodores. Well done, Mark Winterbottom. Career best result. Super stuff. Ahead of McConville, who has been solid this weekend. Paul Morris in the Team Surrey car to get a top 7. That's nice work from Davison and Johnson, the two Dick Johnson racing cars, and Rick Kelly in the top 10 from Paul Dumbrell for Jack Daniels Racing. And Andrew Jones had some nice time out there to run with the front boys, to run with the big names. Valuable experience. And then we roll back to the guys who had, to say the least, a tough reverse grid race.